Tuesday, July 28th, 2026. Time keeps on slipping. And we left off on Revelation 14, verse 1. Then I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000, who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. So already I got a question. So, well, I guess we know. Well, let's see what it means. Which names are these verses referring to? Not horses, what the heck? The passage in Revelation 14:1 refers directly to two names. So his name, the Lamb, Jesus Christ, and his father's name, God the Father, Yahweh. Okay. This refers to the name of Almighty God. In Jewish tradition and Christian theology, God's personal name is Yahweh, often translated as the Lord. Okay. I know somewhere in here it says Jesus will get a new name, so I didn't know if this was reference to that, but this is still at this point using... Actually, let me ask about that. It says it here. Okay, fulfilled promise. Earlier in Revelation, Jesus promises the faithful, the one who conquers, I will write on him the name of my God and my own new name. So if this will be Jesus's new name, then it's not going to be Jesus Christ, as you said. We don't know what name it will be. In Revelation 3:12, Jesus explicitly mentions giving believers his new name. Because of this, many theologians and commentators point out that the exact full name or title revealed in the title fulfillment of Revelation isn't fully disclosed or exhaustively defined in our current text. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. Verse 2. And I heard a voice from heaven like the roar of many waters and like the sound of loud thunder. The voice I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harps, and they were singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and before the elders. No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. So at this point, is this saying that the evangelists, the 144,000, ascend? Is this saying that the 144,000 at this point ascend to heaven? Am I speaking English? It is not getting me tonight. Ascend, not ascend. Is this saying that 144,000 at this point ascend to heaven? Yes. According to most biblical scholars, Revelation 14:1-5 describes the 144,000 as present in heaven before God's throne, having been redeemed and brought into God's presence. However, because Revelation is packed with rich apocalyptic symbolism, interpreters look at the specific geography and phrasing in a few distinct ways. All right, let's see. Key indicators pointing to heaven. So it says, before the throne, 4 living creatures and elders, which we know just by reading, those are in the heavenly court, the throne room of God. Redeemed from the earth. Verse 3 specifically notes that they were redeemed from the earth. And verse 4 adds redeemed from among mankind. The phrase implies a transition of state or location, being taken out of or set apart from the earthly realm. Okay, 2 main interpretive views. While the setting is clearly heavenly, commentators debate whether this represents a literal physical ascension, a spiritual vision, or a symbolic shift in focus. So the literal physical ascension, rapture view. Many futurist commentators hold that the 144,000 have literally been resurrected or raptured to heaven after completing their earthly mission during the tribulation period. Spiritual heavenly perspective. Symbolic and historicist scholars view the 144,000 as representing the entire church. In this view, verse 14, 1 through 3 contrast with chapter 13. While the dragon's followers are marked on earth, God's sealed people are depicted in their spiritual reality, secure with the Lamb on the heavenly Mount Zion, regardless of earthly persecution. Okay. Revelation 14 directly follows Revelation 13, where the beast rules on earth and forces everyone to take his mark. Chapter 14 opens with a reassuring contrast. God's faithful are safe, marked with the Father's name, and standing securely with the Lamb. Well, it sounds to me like the answer is yes, but we'll see. Literally, we'll see. 144,000 redeemed. Verse 4. It is these who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. I knew I saw that they were. We asked about this just maybe last week. I knew I saw that somewhere. Let me highlight this, that they're virgins. It is these who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. It is these who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been redeemed from mankind as firstfruits for God and the Lamb. And in their mouth no lie was found, for they are blameless. If I was petty enough, I'd go back and find it, but I'd actually be curious to see just with that context what it would say, but it doesn't matter. What's more important is just to understand the truth. So let's, now that we're armed with this context. So just to be clear, the 144,000 are going to be people that are not saved at the time of the rapture in dispensationalist view, but will convert to Christ, and they will be virgins. So likely young people, I would imagine, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, you can be a virgin and be old. Okay, yes. In classic dispensational premillennialism, the timeline and nature of the 144,000 work out as follows. So who they are and when they are saved. Jewish evangelists. Dispensationalists interpret Revelation 7 literally, where 12,000 are sealed from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. They're converted after the rapture. At the time of the rapture, all true believers, the church, are taken up into heaven. The 144,000 are Jewish individuals who were not saved prior to the rapture. Following the sudden disappearance of the church, they come to faith in Jesus Christ, the Messiah, during the 7-year tribulation. Once converted, they are specially sealed and protected by God to preach the gospel of the kingdom throughout the earth during the tribulation period, leading to a massive global harvest of believers, often called the tribulation saints. The virgins reference. Dispensational commentators generally view the reference to being virgins and not defiled with women in one of two main ways. Literal celibacy. Taking the text literally, many argue these 144,000 men abstain entirely from sexual relationships and marriage during their intense short-term mission in the tribulation, so they can remain completely focused on preaching under extreme persecution. Well, that's not the meaning of a virgin, though. I mean, it's one thing to be celibate. You can not be a virgin, but choose to be celibate for a time or for the rest of your life. But virginity, of course, is that's a one-time thing. Once you have sex, you lose that. You can't go backwards on it. I mean, that just by definition. So, but the verse says, and they were singing a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and before the elders. No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. It is these who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. Yeah, so it says it. So they are virgins. Okay. Nonetheless, some people interpret it as perhaps not literally, just symbolically. I don't agree with it, but who knows? Spiritual purity is the other view. Others argue that undefiled refers to spiritual purity, specifically that they abstain from the widespread spiritual that they abstain from the widespread spiritual prostitution, idolatry, and religious compromise with the Antichrist that characterizes the tribulation period. Let's see, nuance and alternative views. While this is the standard dispensational view, it's worth noting that other Christian theological perspectives interpret this passage differently. So the historicist views, they see the 144,000 not as a literal group of 144,000 Jewish men, but as a symbolic number representing the complete, total redeemed church of both Old and New Testaments. In this view, virgins is a metaphor for all Christians remaining faithful and morally pure from the corrupt world system. Okay. I mean, that's, well, I mean, that would bode better for anyone, any Christian during the tribulation, but who knows? Actually, that kind of rings, I think I don't want to say like, it's not about liking, but that feels the most true to me, I think. Well, but see, the problem with that is, the only issue with that is, actually, no, that probably isn't true, because the purpose of the 144,000 is to be evangelist and save many souls. So they'll convert many to Christ. But if the 144,000 represented everybody, that wouldn't make sense. Let's ask about that. Wait, what view is that? The amillennial historicist view doesn't make sense, though, in the sense that the 144,000 are said to be evangelists that are responsible for converting many more to Christ during the tribulation. If the 144,000 represented the entirety of the church, it wouldn't make sense that the entire church are themselves evangelists. That is actually one of the strongest arguments dispensationalists make against the symbolic view. My kind of people. You're pointing directly to the structural relationship between Revelation 7, 1 through 8 and Revelation 7, 9 through 17, the great multitude that no one could count, that John saw. So if the 144,000 are the entirety of the saved, how do they convert a separate, countless crowd during the tribulation? Precisely. So here's how non-dispensational perspectives, so the amillennialist, postmillennialist, and historicist, explain that exact dynamic, along with why they interpret it the way they do. Okay. Do I want to read all this? What about the 144,000 being evangelists? Yeah, let's talk about that. So here's their counter to that objection. Strictly speaking, the text of Revelation itself never explicitly calls the 144,000 evangelists or records them preaching. In Revelation 7 and 14, they are described as being sealed, protected, singing in song, and following the Lamb. The idea that they are an elite group of 144,000 worldwide evangelists who convert the world during the 7-year tribulation is actually a dispensational deduction / interpretation brought to the text to explain how the great multitude gets saved after the church is raptured. Okay. So because amillennialists do not believe in a secret pre-tribulation rapture that removes the church, they don't need a newly converted group of evangelists to replace the missing church. Oh, I see. So that's why. So that they don't believe that the rapture will take place before the tribulation in the first place. Okay. All right. Anyway, does not change the road to salvation either way, whichever way you think it'll shake out. Okay. Verse 5. And in their mouth no lie was found, for they are blameless. Then I saw another angel flying directly overhead with an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation and tribe and language and people. Okay, so at this point, this would be, at this point, everyone would, I guess you could point at this part and say, at this point of the tribulation, no one will have an excuse because there will literally be an angel that spreads the word of God to everybody. So everybody will have a chance to make their own decision. Okay, then I saw another angel flying directly overhead with an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on earth, to every nation and tribe and language and people. And he said with a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea and the springs of water." Another angel, a second, followed, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all nations drink the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality." And another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and its image, and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will also drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb." Okay, so this is man, I have a few questions now. Dang. Okay, so wait a minute. So now there's an angel telling them, don't get the mark. Because if you do, you'll burn in hell, basically. So they're getting down to brass tacks at this point. But in Revelation 13, I thought it said, and maybe it's not exactly chronological, but let's see. Yeah, so it says right here in the previous chapter, Revelation 13, when it's talking about the beast or the false prophet, and it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Now this part is the part I was talking about. Also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Okay, so it said, I guess it doesn't say it here. I thought it said that everyone already had to make a choice, but it's more so just announcing what's about to happen. And then in the very next chapter, and I guess that would make sense, right? Otherwise, that would not be within God's character for them to be forced to take the mark, and then after the fact sends an angel and says, don't get the mark or you're going to go to hell. So likely this is okay, so this is the fair warning that everybody's going to get. Now the question that I have still, though, is if anyone worships the beast and its image, he will also drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Explain this verse. Don't use tables. Specifically, I want to know the reference to being in the Lamb's presence. Is this talking about a separate event? That is not going to hell for eternity. Why would people in hell be in the Lamb's presence? In other words, Jesus would have no reason to be in hell. I think it's referring to the second event when after the devil, he's locked up and then he's let out, and then some people will convert, and then it says, God's going to kill all of them with a comet or with fire. Maybe that's what it's referring to. This is one of the most intriguing and debated phrasing choices in the book of Revelation. The verse describes the judgment of those who worship the beast, highlighting that their torment occurs in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. To understand why Jesus, the Lamb, is present here, and whether this refers to standard hell or a distinct event, it helps to examine how scholars and theologians interpret this passage. So is this a separate event or eternal hell? Most biblical scholars view Revelation 14:10 as a description of final judgment and hell, rather than a completely separate temporary event. In Revelation 14:11, the very next verse adds that the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night. Jeez. Because the duration is described as eternal, it ties directly into the concept of final condemnation, often associated with the lake of fire in Revelation 20. Okay, so far agreed, but however, why would Jesus and the angels be present? There are three main ways this is understood. First way, Jesus as the present judge and executioner. In modern Western thought, hell is often pictured as a place where God is completely absent and Satan is in charge. Well, we know that's not the case. Yeah, because Satan's going to be locked up too. But in biblical theology, Satan is a prisoner in hell, not its ruler. God is omnipresent, sovereign over all creation, and the sole administrator of divine justice. Being in the presence of the Lamb highlights that this judgment is actively authorized, witnessed, and upheld by Christ himself, rather than abandoning judgment to an external realm. Jesus is present as the righteous judge executing justice over rebellion. And I would agree with that. The only thing that trips that interpretation up is the mention of the angels. But maybe angels will, stand guard in hell and make sure, I don't know, nobody escapes. I'm not sure. It could be. Wrath as the presence of God unfiltered. What is this? I was trying to see if it mentions the angels. Yeah, but in the interpretation of Jesus as the present judge and executioner, that would make sense, except for the mention of the holy angels. What do theologians say about that? The inclusion of the holy angels alongside the Lamb fits squarely into both ancient judicial customs and wider biblical theology regarding divine judgment. So angels as the courtroom witness and executioners. In both the Old and New Testaments, angels are frequently depicted as the court attendants, witnesses, and executioners of divine decree, not passive bystanders. Okay. Throughout Scripture, angels actively carry out God's judgments. In Jesus' own parables, he specifically assigns angels this role. In the parable of the weeds, Jesus explains, "The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers, and throw them into the fiery furnace." Oh, I see. Okay, so it could mean in the Lamb's presence, because God is omnipresent, and then also in front of the holy angels, because they would be the literal, like doing the legwork, taking souls down and casting them into hell. It's pretty scary, but okay. Okay, I'm satisfied. All right, so now let's go back. Where were we? Verse 11. "And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night. These worshippers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of its name." Here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. "And I heard a voice from heaven saying, 'Write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them.'" "Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and seated on the cloud, one like a son of man with a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. And another angel came out of the temple, calling with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, "Put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is fully ripe." So he who sat on the cloud swung his sickle across the earth, and the earth was reaped. Then another angel came. Okay, so I don't want to rush through this part, so let's just do this breakdown on this last part, and then we'll call it for tonight. But I think, so at this point, is this saying this is the start of the final judgment? Is this the starting point of everybody on earth being collected for the final judgment? Yes. Revelation 14:16 is a visual prophecy representing the gathering of people for the end time judgment. But commentators differ slightly on who is being collected in this specific verse. So two different harvests. In Revelation 14:14 through 20, the text presents two distinct harvests back to back using the image of a sharp sickle. The grain harvest, when it says, "So he who sat on the cloud swung his sickle across the earth, and the earth was reaped." So these would be the saved people. The reaper executed directly by one like a son of man, Jesus Christ, sitting on a white cloud. The grape harvest. So the angel swung his sickle across the earth and gathered the grape harvest of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. The reaper executed by an angel, leading to a crushing wrath and judgment. Okay, so view number one, the harvest of the righteous. So who's being reaped in verse 16, the one we just read? The believers. So Jesus personally gathers his followers into safety. Similar to the wheat harvest in Matthew 13:30. The wicked are then gathered separately in the grape harvest that immediately follows. Yeah, okay. Oh boy, all right. Isn't this just so fascinating? All right, so we'll leave it there for tonight, and we'll pick it up tomorrow on Revelation 14:17. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to drop a sub, share it with a friend. God bless you guys, and good night.